They sent me flowers the morning they erased me. A smug little bouquet of yellow tulips, as if betrayal could be softened by florist-grade optimism. No card. Just a delivery, timestamped 9:42 a.m., 15 minutes before I lost access to the company VPN. I was in the middle of debugging a latency spike when it happened. The system booted me mid-compile, threw a cheery access revoked toast on my screen, froze like it had the decency to feel ashamed. I stared at the terminal for a second too long, heart punching like it was trying to signal Morse code through my ribs. Then I laughed. Not a cute, office-appropriate chuckle. A hollow, ragged thing that scraped up from my diaphragm and filled the co-working space like smoke. The guy next to me, some VC's nephew playing entrepreneur with his dad's seed money, actually unplugged his AirPods. I remember thinking, he'll tell this story one day. The day he sat next to the woman who burned $1 billion infrastructure from a WeWork hot desk in downtown Seattle. Because here's the twist, the one they never saw coming. I wasn't just the dev who built their predictive logistics engine, I was the logistics engine. Every optimization, my math. Every anomaly flag, my logic. And the core module, one they thought they owned because my name got scrubbed from the commit history. That heartbeat was never theirs to claim. See, back in February, when they still brought me lattes and CC'd me on strategy decks, I pitched a modular fallback system. In case of API cascade failure, I said, for resilience. They nodded, approved the budget, and let me bury it. Only I didn't write it in our stack. I wrote it in mine. Encrypted, obfuscated, recursive architecture so elegant it practically hummed. To the untrained eye, it was just a dependency chain, one of dozens in our private repo. But at its core, a signature handshake protocol only my token could complete. You cut me out, the system doesn't just glitch. It collapses. And guess what? By firing me, they triggered the failsafe. But here's the real kicker. It wouldn't be immediate. That's too merciful. I gave it a delay. A drip-feed corrosion of stability, timed perfectly to peak when investor demos started Friday morning. Micro delays. Phantom 504s. Duplicate orders in the Kansas warehouse. Just enough noise to start the unraveling. They thought deleting my Slack handle erased me. They forgot code doesn't need a cubicle. And me? I wasn't out for revenge. Not yet. Not until I got the push notification that changed everything. User M token just initiated heartbeat. Someone inside had used my key, which meant one thing, they knew I never really left. The push notification hit my phone like a thunderclap in a confession booth. M token, heartbeat initiated from IP 10.44.2.93 Fremont cluster. Timestamp, 11:13 a.m., 2 hours after they fired me. That IP didn't belong to any staging sandbox. It wasn't a dev environment. That was production, live. Someone had triggered the fallback manually. And not just someone inside. I stared at the screen, pulse tightening like a zip tie around my throat, because that token, that wasn't just a kill switch. It was a signature. It verified the user against a biometric hash I built into my own machine. There were only 3 devices in the world that could have accessed that module. Mine, my encrypted backup drive in storage, and Elliot's laptop. If Elliot had my token, no. He didn't. He couldn't. Unless he cloned it. Unless someone helped him. The elevator mirrors caught my expression as I descended toward the parking garage, shoulders rigid, lips flat, eyes like 2 loaded triggers. My reflection looked calm, professional. But inside, I was calculating. There are moments when betrayal feels like a scalpel, sharp, cold, precise. But this felt like a chainsaw to the gut. Someone had taken my code, my key, my name, and jammed it into the machine like a stolen organ. By the time I slid behind the wheel of my car, I was already routing through proxies, tunneling into private logs I wasn't supposed to have access to anymore. But here's the other thing they forgot. I built those logs. Left myself a backdoor camouflaged under a deprecated error handler. Corporate had thought it was legacy noise, but I called it something else, the Wraith window. It showed me everything. I watched in real time as the heartbeat pings flared up across server clusters in Ohio, Texas, and Belgium. One by one, the fallback modules activated. Not triggered by failure, triggered by design. A new cron job had been slipped in 3 days ago. A job I didn't write. Its name, /reconsolidate/Mariam cleanse sh. They weren't just using my engine. They were phasing me out from the inside. Someone had rewritten the structure to cannibalize my original failsafe, rebuild the engine without me, line by line. And the worst part, it was working. The data flow was stabilizing, just enough to fake normalcy. But I could see the seams, the fractures, the deadlocks stacking like unpaid debts. I closed my laptop slowly. They wanted a system without me. Fine. But if they thought they could reverse engineer my brain without consequences, I hadn't read the last 200 lines of my prototype. Because beneath the surface, beneath the logic trees and memory maps, I'd buried something deeper. A recursive watchdog, and it just woke up. The watchdog had one purpose: punish hubris. It was a ghost I'd built into the architecture on a drunken Sunday night, equal parts paranoia and poetry. A recursive crawler that slept inside the core, invisible unless someone touched it wrong. Whoever rewrote my fallback job, they tickled it in its sleep. Now it was awake and hungry. I sat in my car, engine off, listening to the HVAC system wheeze its last gusts of stale heat while packet logs spilled across my screen like a confession. The watchdog had already flagged the edited code paths. Not just flagged, infected. Its protocol didn't crash the system. That was too obvious, too crude. It rewrote trust. Anything modified after my removal date got marked as unstable. Corrupted behavioral logic. A lie, technically. But when the system believes it can't trust itself, it begins to misfire, to hesitate. Think of it like a pianist suddenly doubting middle C. That's what hit Fremont at 1:03 p.m. Shipping algorithms rerouted trucks from Chicago to Phoenix, in reverse. Warehouse bots in Belgium sorted parcels by font size. And the real cherry on top, auto-invoicing triggered a cascade that billed $3.6 million to a dead client account labeled "Do Not Charge IRS Inquiry." And all of that chaos, all that deliberate surgical nonsense, stemmed from 2 lines of code I'd left buried in a module called /heartbeat/echo loop v4, which, as of Friday morning, would reach its crescendo. But none of that terrified me. What terrified me was that someone knew about it, because buried in the logs, past the IPS, through the packet fog, was a line of code that hadn't been there before. It wasn't part of the job that fired me. It wasn't part of the override that butchered my system. It was a message. Les KOP Cyrillic letter 456 U verate yede age verate is // nice failsafe. I improved it. Let's talk before this goes nuclear. I read it 5 times. 10. My stomach dropped with each pass. Wasn't Elliot. Elliot couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. The man still thought JSON was short for Jason. And it wasn't Rachel from HR unless she moonlighted as a black hat developer with God-tier access. No, this was someone else. Someone who'd found my watchdog, modified it, left a note. And that meant they were inside. They hadn't just kept me out, they'd broken in, into my code, my system. The only thing more dangerous than a thief who steals your work is one who understands it. Because now it wasn't just about revenge. It was about containment. I wasn't the only ghost in the machine anymore. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid, no. Fear burned off hours ago like engine coolant on an open flame. What I felt was worse, intrigue. That sick, obsessive itch that claws behind your eyes when someone dares to finish your sentence better than you. Whoever left that message, they knew what they were doing. They didn't just modify my watchdog, they tightened it. Rewrote one of my lazy recursive loops with a ternary structure that was cleaner, faster. Elegant, even, and that was the problem. See, you can smell someone's style in their syntax. It's like a fingerprint made of logic and pride. And this had her all over it. Nadia, ex-Phil engineer, ex-NSA, and very, very ex-friend. Met 6 years ago on a DARPA grant project where I was writing predictive logistics AI, and she was hacking it blindfolded for fun. We were supposed to collaborate. Instead, we outbuilt each other for 19 months straight. It ended with me rage-quitting the grant and her sending me a congratulations card with a single line, "Your code cries in lowercase." I hadn't spoken to her since, until now. But here she was, signing my failsafe like it was a damn guestbook. That changed everything. Because if Nadia was involved, this wasn't some petty office mutiny. This wasn't Elliot trying to cut costs or Rachel pulling strings from HR like a vulture in Laubautins. This was surgical, strategic, and personal. I pulled into the underground parking garage of my old office building at 3:12 a.m., headlights off, heart thudding like a warning drum. Security had switched to badge only after hours, but I still had a backdoor script to spoof admin access. It was sloppy, built for emergencies only. This was one. I slid past the receptionist desk, rode the elevator to the server floor, and stepped into the data center like a ghost who still remembered how the air used to taste. And there she was, in the cold blue glow of Rack 17, hunched over the terminal like it owed her money. Hoodie up, hair in that same messy braid she always claimed was combat-ready. She didn't even flinch when I stepped into the room. "Thought you might come," Nadia said without turning. Her voice was warm asphalt, smooth but ready to scrape. "How long?" I asked. "Since before the tulips, of course." I moved closer, stopping exactly 6 feet away, the same distance we kept on the DARPA floor, like rival queens negotiating territory. "You rewrote my loop," I said. "You left it open." I felt my jaw tighten. "Why?" Nadia finally turned, and her eyes, they were tired, but not guilty. "They're not just cutting you out," she said. "They're selling it, all of it. The engine, the fallback, the dataset, your dataset." I froze. No one builds a predictive model that accurate without real-time user harvesting. They buried it deep, obfuscated in the API calls, masked as debug telemetry. Your logistics AI, it's been watching people. Tracking routes, purchase habits, warehouse response times, behavioral mapping at scale. The government's sniffing around now. And then she dropped the final bomb. They needed to kill you off before the subpoenas hit. My lungs forgot how to breathe. I wasn't fired because I was obsolete. I was fired because I was evidence. A loose thread they couldn't afford to leave dangling. But they made one mistake. They left the scissors in my hand. By dawn, the building was waking up, keycards bleeping, coffee brewing, the illusion of normalcy booting up like a tired OS. But I wasn't part of that illusion anymore. I was the error they thought they deleted. Nadia and I sat in the janitor's closet between the server room and the main IT bullpen. She was sketching packet traces on a discarded pizza box like it was parchment. I was cross-referencing her breadcrumbs against my own kill switch map. They weren't just harvesting metadata, we're aggregating predictive profiles, shipping behaviors, reordering cycles, warehouse idle times, even inferred employee break schedules. Surveillance disguised as optimization, and it got worse. They'd already sold a pilot license to a third-party defense contractor, not a logistics firm, not a retail partner, a tactical forecasting company. Elliot hadn't just stolen my code, he weaponized it. My heartbeat protocol, now a diagnostic tool to predict deployment logistics for unmanned ops. I designed it to shave seconds off shipping latency. They were using it to shave blood off battlefields. I tasted bile. "They can't run it without the core," I muttered. "Even if they patched it, it'll desync within 96 hours. "Not if they ghost it," Nadia said, flipping the pizza box. "That's why they needed your token. They're building a synthetic bridge, an emulator of your core engine, trained on your past commits. Not perfect, but enough to stabilize long enough to demo to buyers." My hands clenched. They weren't just erasing me. They were resurrecting me, some twisted Frankenstein version trained to think like me, speak like me, code like me, without actually being me. "I want it to fail," I said, spectacularly, on camera, during the live demo. Nadia looked up. "Then we need the root access back." "You know what that means," I did. Only way back in was through Elliot. And that meant facing the grinning coward in his glass tower, the same one who told me during performance review that I should smile more when presenting tech to stakeholders. The same guy who once took credit for an AI patch I wrote in the middle of my mother's funeral reception. He kept his admin privileges in a secure key vault tethered to his executive suite on the 26th floor. His laptop, paranoid fortress of facial scans, retina locks, and biometric tokens, was untouchable. But he had a weakness, his assistant. Ava, she was the one who scheduled the Celebrating Wins meeting, the one who ordered the tulips, the one who always lingered a half-second longer when she passed me in the hallway, like she wanted to say something but never did. "Let me guess," I said to Nadia. "Ava's been sniffing around. She's the reason I found your watchdog," Nadia said. She flagged it quietly, without tipping off Elliot. "Left a data trail on purpose. Girls looking for a way out." I exhaled. "Then let's give her one." We made contact that night. A burner SIM, a private thread disguised as a DoorDash support chat. Ava responded within 3 minutes. "Ava, I know what he did to you. I know what he's selling. Tell me what to do. Me, I need access. I need 5 minutes alone with his machine. Ava, he's flying to DC. Friday for the demo. I can stall the flight. You've got 30 minutes in his office that morning. No more. Me, done. What do you want in return? Ava, I want him ruined. Publicly. The rage in those 4 words. Felt like an old song. We had our breach window, our lever, our inside ally. All that was left was the virus. Because if they wanted a ghost to replace me, fine, I'd give them one. But this ghost would haunt. I wrote the virus like I was writing a love letter to vengeance. Not some brute force logic bomb, that's for amateurs. No, what I built was elegant. A recursive mimic protocol that would crawl Elliot's synthetic engine and mirror it, line by line, function by function, until it was indistinguishable from the fake I'd been replaced with. And then, just before the demo, it would do what I'd trained it for, betray him. On command, would reroute predictions to produce catastrophic outcomes cloaked in statistical plausibility. Trucks scheduled to arrive 3 days late. Fulfillment centers overloaded by phantom orders. Forecasts skewed by artificial data pulses that made the system look confident while it was actually bleeding out. It would pass the tests. It would pass the dry runs. But under real conditions, with real-time pressure, it would implode. The name of the script, Seraphim Mirror Final SH, because sometimes angels fall on purpose. Friday arrived soaked in rain. Seattle was crying on my behalf. I wore a hoodie and cheap jeans, hair braided tight under a baseball cap. Ava had done her part. Elliot was scheduled to leave at 9:30 a.m. I had from 8:45 to 9:15. No more, no less. Nadia dropped me off 2 blocks from the building. She didn't say good luck. She said, finish the cord. I slipped through back access like a phantom, badge still spoofed. Cameras looped for a 40-minute window using an exploit I left in the firmware months ago as a joke. No one laughed then. They would now. Elevator, 26th floor. Office still empty. Ava's signal was clean, coast clear. Elliot's laptop sat like a smug little throne on his glass desk. MacBook Pro M3 Ultra, patched, encrypted, but I knew his passphrase. Roan 89. Vision board because men like Elliot always use the year they studied abroad and the word vision. They think the universe bends for them. I was in within 60 seconds. I deployed the payload like a whisper. The virus masked itself inside an approved analytics module, one he used to impress clients. It copied his own changes, mirrored his fake logic. Then it nested, waiting for the demo server to activate. The final touch, script that would trigger a silent export of all system logs to 3 watchdog organizations, complete with commit histories, internal chat threads, and the names of every executive involved in the synthetic rebuild and data harvesting. By the time they realized the engine was hallucinating predictions, whistleblowers would already have the receipts. At 9:13 a.m., I wiped the terminal. At 9:14, I locked the machine and left through the side stairwell. At 9:16, Elliot entered the building with an umbrella and 2 phones, probably dreaming of handshakes and steak dinners in DC. By noon, his team would be standing in front of defense contractors, smiling confidently while the engine predicted a non-existent supply chain between Detroit and Djibouti. By 12:05, that smile would crack. And by 12:17, system would crash with a final line of error code. Ghost echo at Seraphim. Trust breach detected. Fall initiated. And trust me, I'd be watching. I watched the demo unravel from a bar across the street, tucked into a corner booth with a burner laptop and a whiskey I didn't sip. The stream was private, sure, client access only, but Nadia had jacked in hours before through a forgotten dev relay, still linked to a sandbox branch, labeled UX Review Mariam Final. Never even renamed it. The screen showed a sterile boardroom in DC, all glass and chrome, lined with execs trying to look casually predatory. Elliot stood near the front, wearing that navy blazer he once called his battle suit. The projection behind him pulsed with my stolen engine, wrapped in a shiny new interface called Aegis Core Trademark, like slapping a Kevlar vest on a paper skeleton. Real-time adaptive logistics, trained on billions of data points, Elliot bragged. We predict demand before it exists. We solve choke points before they form. And today, we'll show you how. He hit the button. The room dimmed. A scenario loaded, emergency rerouting of supply units through unstable regions. $1 million test. 10 seconds in, the system sparkled. Graphs adjusted. Dots danced across maps like a military ballet. And then came the shift. I'd written the trigger to wait until 47 seconds in, just past their confidence peak, just before the pivot to client Q and A. Suddenly, the map stuttered. Red dots blinked into supply deserts. Response times jumped from 11 minutes to 72 hours. Optimized clusters began looping, overcorrecting into dead zones. Warehouse reassignments stacked recursively, then collapsed. A soft chime echoed through the boardroom, followed by a system dialog box they hadn't seen before. Aegis Core integrity warning. Predictive confidence 12%. Manual override recommended. Source /Seraphim Mirror Final SH user. Ghost Echo Trace ID. Mariam 01 Panic has a sound. It's not yelling, it's silence, sharp and unnatural. No one moved. Elliot's jaw twitched. Someone whispered, "Is this part of the demo?" The stream lagged as the system attempted recovery. Tried to reforecast using sandbox data, but the watchdog loop kicked in. The emulator was now fighting itself, real predictions poisoned by fabricated echoes. I'd built it to fracture along a clean seam, so when it tore, it looked intentional. And then came the final nail. A quiet ping on Elliot's personal machine back in Seattle. An auto-launch browser window. And then, whistleblower packet sent recipients. Sec, do D, a clue, EFF. One very spicy investigative journalist at The Verge. Every commit, every access token, every internal memo naming me as Contractor M, then abruptly erased post-termination. The engines shift to synthetic mimicry. The buried data siphons. The screen flickered one last time, then cut to black. Demo over. I leaned back in the booth, pulse so calm it scared me. Nadia slid into the seat across from me with a coffee and a crooked smile. "They're done," she said. "Just don't know it yet," I replied, and I meant it. Because by the time Elliot's team realized it wasn't a glitch, that it wasn't some QA oversight or DNS hiccup, they'd already be radioactive. Their golden engine, now a documented threat profile. Their synthetic AI, legally compromised. And me, I wasn't coming back. I wasn't interested in apologies, lawsuits, or severance hush money. They buried me without a headstone. So I became the earthquake. 2 weeks later, the SEC froze their accounts. By week 3, a congressional subcommittee was asking why a private tech firm used anonymized behavioral data, harvested without consent, to model real-time deployment simulations for military-adjacent logistics. By week 4, TechCrunch ran a headline I printed, framed, and now keep above my stove. From ghost code to courtroom. The woman they erased built the bomb that brought them down. Tried to spin it, of course. Elliot went on CNBC stammering about rogue actors and legacy contractors with unchecked access. He didn't mention the $2.4 million in bonuses he greenlit for himself while ghosting my name off internal logs. He didn't mention the offshore shell account in his wife's maiden name either, though that did make The Verge follow up. Rachel from HR quit quietly the day after her Slack DMs leaked. Nadia, she's freelancing again. Turns out blowing up tech war criminals is lucrative in weird corners of the ethical gray market. We still don't call it a friendship. But sometimes she sends me memes captioned "your code cries" in lowercase, and I pretend not to smile. And Ava, she's good. Better than good. NDA-free, whistleblower protected, and running ops for a startup that pays women what they're worth. Last I heard, left a tulip bouquet on Elliot's doorstep with a handwritten note. "For your vision board, me, I went quiet. Not because I had to, because I chose to. When the system collapses and the fire dies down, the smartest thing you can do is walk away with clean shoes and full pockets. But I didn't vanish. I'm somewhere between myth and method now. A cautionary tale executives whisper about overpriced espresso. Remember what happened to Apex Stream? That ghost girl. Only I'm not a ghost. I'm the mirror, the failsafe. The one you forget about until the servers start bleeding and your empire chokes on its own code. They fired me thinking they erased my name. But they didn't understand one thing. My name was never in the footer. It was in the foundation."
Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.